Hello again, welcome to the third part of how to create a shopping cart Java desktop application. In the first part of this tutorial, we have seen how to create the window and the menu for our application. In part number 2, we'll learn how to populate the home view with the products available. And in this part, we will create the shopping cart view, which will display what's on our shopping cart. If you haven't watched the other videos, I highly recommend that you do, so you can follow along easily. This video will be organized in 3 sections. We will start by creating a class called shopping cart, and we will be using an object-oriented approach. Next, we will connect the home view from the previous tutorial with the shopping cart. Specifically, we will update the shopping cart every time we click in any Add to Cart button. And in the third section, we will create the view that will display the content of the shopping cart. Perfect, so without further ado, let's get started. As we said, we will start by creating a class called shopping cart, which is gonna manage the products in our shopping cart. The shopping cart is basically a list of entries, each entry containing the product itself and the quantity. And we are gonna need to be able to perform the following operations on the cart: add a product, remove a product from the shopping cart, then get a quantity for a given product, and finally calculate the total cost of our shopping cart. So we are gonna have one class called cart entry that will have the product and the quantity, and then a shopping cart class which will contain a collection of cart entries, and then the following methods: add product, remove product, get quantity, and calculate total. Alright, that gives us an overview of the classes we need to implement the shopping cart and how the code will be organized. Let's start with the cart entry class. I will create a class called cart entry, and this class will have 2 fields: a field of the type product, which we will call product, and then an integer field, since the quantity is a number, which I will call quantity. And then I will add a constructor. Then the getters to be able to access both fields, product and quantity. And also we are gonna add 2 more methods, one to increase the quantity, so I will call it exactly that, increase quantity. And all this method need to do is to add 1 to the quantity field. And then another method, decrease quantity, which will do quantity minus 1 if the quantity is higher than 0. This is important because a negative quantity doesn't make sense. You can have one product in your shopping cart, but you cannot have a minus 1 product. Amazing. We just created our cart entry class, so let's create the shopping cart class now. I will call it shopping cart, and I will create a field that will hold a collection of entries. So I'm gonna do that using a map with a string for the type of the keys, and then cart entry type for the values. That means that the map is gonna hold pairs with the product name and then the cart entry, which will contain the product in that entry, and how many of these products we have in our cart, so that will be the quantity. I'm using a map so it's easier and quicker to search for products by name. So let's talk about the constructor. All this constructor needs to do is to initialize the map. Perfect. The next operation is add product. So what that this method should do? It should receive as parameter a product name, and then it will look for an entry that contains that product. If it finds it, it will increase the quantity by 1, and if it doesn't find an entry for that product, it will create a new one with quantity 1. I will post a video here so you can try to write the code by yourself for this method before I show you the solution. Alright, so first I will look for an entry for that given product in the map. Since the map is using the product name as the key, all we need to do is using the get method. So I will do entries.get and the product name, and this will return a cart entry which I will call product entry. Now I will write an if statement and check if the product entry is null. If it's not null, it means that the product was already in the cart. So for example, that will be the case if we are trying to add a second apple to our cart. So in that case, we will increase the quantity for that entry. If the entry is null, that product is not in the cart. So I will first work out the product for that given product name. And I need to do this to get all information about the product, like the image file and the price. Then I will create a cart entry for that product with 1 as the quantity. And then I will do entries.put and add the entry to the map. Next method is gonna be the remove product method. This method will get the product name as a parameter. As before, we will do entries.get with the product name to see if there is an entry in the cart for that product. And if the entry is not null, it means the product is already in the cart, so we will decrease the quantity. And that's all. You could remove the entry in case that the entry quantity is 0, but we are going to leave that for now and move on to the next method. The next method is the get quantity. This method will return the quantity, which is an integer. And to do so, it will need the product name as a parameter. So as before, this method will first get the entry for the given product. If the entry exists in the map, then we can return the quantity for that entry. Otherwise, if the product is not in the cart, I will return 0. And the last method is the one to calculate the shopping cart cost. So we will have a variable for the total, which will be a float since the result can be a decimal number. Then I will go through every entry in the cart and multiply the product price by the quantity and add this number to the total, and that will give us the total shopping cart cost. Perfect, so we just finished the shopping cart, although there is a small extra thing that we need to do. Since we just need one single instance of this class, we are gonna use a singleton pattern here. This will allow us to access the shopping cart instance from different places in our application. So to do that, I will add the following. First, a field that is gonna be private and static of the type shopping cart, and I will call it instance. And then I will create a method that will be public and static, which will return an instance of this class. And I will call this method getInstance. So this method will check if the field instance is null. And if so, it means that no instance of this class was created in the application. So I will create one and then return it. This means the first time you call this method, it will create a shopping cart instance, and for the next calls, it will return the same instance which was created the first time. Awesome, so the shopping cart class is complete now. Let's see now how we can use the shopping cart. For example, every time we click on the Add to Cart button, we want the product to be added to the shopping cart. To do this, we need to go back to the Home Controller class, and we are gonna add a listener to the button Add to Cart. So I will do Add Button, dot, and then set on action, and I will pass a handler here, as you can see. So whatever we write here, that will be the code that is gonna be executed every time we press the Add button. So what we want to do here is add a product to the shopping cart. However, since we have different buttons, how do we know if the button was the one to add milk or it was the one to add juice? To facilitate that, we are gonna attach the product name to every button, so we know to which product the button belongs to. So right after creating a button, I will do add button dot and then set user data, and I will pass the product name. So now every button has a label with its product name. So let's go back to the listener, and here we want to add a product to the cart. So first I will find the button that was pressed. So I will say action event dot get source, and that will return a type node which will contain the button, and I'm gonna call this variable source component. And now that I have the button, I can access the user data which contains the product name. So I will do source component dot get username, and that will return the product name. Okay, so we know what we want to add to the shopping cart. Now we need to access the shopping cart instance that we created earlier. So I will do shopping cart dot get instance, and this will return a shopping cart instance. And now I will call the add product method, passing the product name that we want to add as a parameter. And that's all we need to do. Now we can add products into our shopping cart. However, because we are not displaying the shopping cart anywhere, we don't know whether the product was actually added or not. Let's do that next. We are going to create a new view which will display the current state of the shopping cart, which will show up when we click on the shopping cart icon. To create this view, we are gonna follow similar steps to the ones we used when we created the home view. First, we will create the fxml file, then we will create the class cart view that will load the fxml file, and last, a controller which will populate the view with the shopping cart state. Alright, so let's start with the fxml file. So I will create a file called cart.fxml, which will contain the following: a VBox with the ID cart panel. This will be the panel that we will populate with the cart entries. So let's create the cart view class. And here I will add a constructor where I will create a file with the location of the fxml file. And then I will load the file using the fxml loader. And as before, we will add a view field and also a getView method to access this view from other classes. So now that we have our cart view ready, let's connect it with the application menu. So I will open the app controller class, and inside the method showCartView, I will replace the label with our new view. So I will do new cart view and then get view. Perfect, so let's run this now and test that all that we did so far is actually working. Alright, so here we have our application, and if we click on the cart icon, then nothing shows up because we still haven't populated the view, but at least we know that the cart.fxml file is loading and that there is no errors. Okay, let's continue. Now we are gonna create the controller for our new view. So I'm gonna call this class cart controller. And let's connect the view and the controller. So I will open the cart.fxml file, and in the root node right here, I will add the attribute fx controller equal and then the cart controller class, including the package. Perfect, let's go back to the controller. So we are gonna populate the view now with the cart entries. So as before, we need a reference to the panel that we are gonna populate. So we will add a new field. So I will say add fxml and then private vbox and cart panel. And this is the ID for the vbox panel that will contain all the entries. Before writing the code to populate the view, let's examine the view and the layout we are gonna create a little bit closer. So here is the view we are gonna create. We will add a label with the shopping cart, then a vbox for each cart entry, and at the bottom a separator and then the total, which is gonna be a horizontal box or an H box with two labels, one for the total word and another label for the actual number. Okay, so let's put this in Java. So I will go back to the cart controller and add the initialize method. So I will add fxml and then public void and initialize, and here we will be populating the view. First we will get the entries of the shopping cart. To do so, I will do shopping cart.getInstance and then .getEntries. And this will return a list of the cart entries. I don't think we have implemented this method, so let me show you this method quickly. It will just return a list with all the entries in the map. Okay, so let's go back to the cart controller. And next we will do cart panel.getChildren's and clear to remove any component and leave the view empty. And now, in case there is no entry, so if the shopping cart is empty, we will just display a label saying empty cart. And we will add that to the cart panel. So cart panel, then getChildren's dot add and then the empty label. Now what if we actually have stuff in our cart? So I will add an else section, and here we will add the header label saying shopping cart, and I will add that to the view. Then we will loop through each cart entry, and for each cart entry we will create an H box which will contain the details like the product name and the quantity. To start, our H box is gonna have just the product name. So I will create an H box and then a label with the product name, and then add the label to the H box, and then adding the H box to the cart panel. Alright, so let's run this and see how we're doing so far. Perfect, so let's open the cart and it shows that it's empty. And let's go to the home view and add milk. And if we go back to the cart, perfect, the milk is there now. Awesome work. So let's continue and make our application looks a bit better. So here is how we want every entry to look. We will need an hbox to arrange all components horizontally. First, we will have an image view with the product, then a label with the product name, then the plus button, the quantity, a minus button, and last the price, which will be a label as well. So let's see how to write this in Java. I'm going to create another method called cart.entry_view, which, given a cart entry, it will return an hbox. And first thing this method will do will be creating an hbox and then create an image view. And for that, I will need to load the product image into the application and then create an image view object and then the image view. The dimensions of the image will be 50 by 50. Then I will create a label which I'm gonna call product name, and I will change the style using the setStyle method, and here I will change the font size to be a bit bigger and also the padding. Then I will create another label for the quantity and I will add some padding as well, so there is a space between the components. Then the plus button with a padding as well, the minus button, and I will also create a label with the price. And now I will insert all these components inside the hbox so they are arranged horizontally. So layout.getChildren.addAll, and here I will add the components in the order in which I want them to appear. And last, return the layout. So now let's go back to the initialize method and use the new method to create the entry view. So I will do hbox layout equal to cart entry view. Perfect, so let's run this now. And amazing, the shopping cart is looking much better now. And we are very close to finish the application. All we need to do is add in the total at the bottom and add the listeners to our buttons so the quantity increase and decrease when we press them. Alright, let's add the separator. So I will create a separator saying separator, then separator as a variable equal new separator. And I will set the orientation to horizontally so the line goes from the left to the right. And now I will add it to the container layout. So cart panel.getChildren's add and then the separator. So let's add the total now. So for this component, I'm gonna add a new method to create the view. So this method will return an hbox and I will call it total view, and the parameter will be a float with the total price. Inside, I will first create the hbox. And then create a label to display the total word. And I will add some style to this to make the text bigger. And I will add another label for the price. And then add the two labels to the container layout, doing total view.getChildren's and then add all and the two labels, and then I will return the layout. Alright, so this function will create the total labels. So let's call it now from the initialize method. So I will do total view and we need to pass the total price. So for this I'm gonna call the shopping cart.getInstance and then get total. And remember, this was the method that we wrote earlier to calculate the total cost of the shopping cart. And this will return an hbox, which I'm gonna add to the parent container here. So let's run this now. And awesome, I can see that the cart total is now at the bottom. So last, I'm gonna add a listener to the plus button to increase the quantity. So let's go back to the cart entry view method, and after creating the plus button, I will add plus button dot set user data, and I will pass here the product name. And then I will add the listener, so I will say plus button dot set on action, and this is very similar to what we did in the second video with the add to cart button. And here I will get the product name of the button that was pressed, then add the product to the shopping cart using the add product method, then update the text in the quantity label, and also update the total label, which is displaying the total price. So as you can see, the total price label is a field of this class. And the reason of this is that so other methods can also access and update the label. So for the minus button, you will do exactly the same, but calling the remove product method instead of the add product. Alright, so we finally finished the application. Well done! If you finished the whole tutorial, you should be proud because you really did an amazing work. So let's run the application now and let's see if it works. So here is our application, and if we press the increase button, the quantity increase and the total also get updated. Alright, so amazing work. Please, if you have any questions or problems while following the tutorial, please drop a comment below and I will be happy to help. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I will see you in the next one.